Hi, my name is Whitney and I'm the owner and curator of Clay Insights on Instagram. I wanted to make this Q&A for you guys today because I get so many messages asking me all different kinds of questions all day long on my Instagram. So what I did was I found a very talented group of clay makers. Some have been doing it for a really long time and some haven't been doing it for such a long time, but they feel like they have some great advice. So I have this group of ladies, I call them my creative consultants. They're amazing, and I came to them with questions from you guys. I went to my Instagram stories and I said, please place your questions here. I got over 60 questions, I think, just in that 24-hour period of my story being up. And so I was only able to get, I believe, 15 questions. Maybe 14 questions. I think 15 questions that I was able to get answered for you guys. So first of all, I have my laptop here and I want to go ahead and tell you guys who is in my creative consultant group, the amazing group of clay makers who agreed to help me with answering these questions for you guys. So we have Asha over at Live and Lost Clay, Isabel at the Atelierista of Love, I don't think I pronounced that right, Alyssa over at Liz Made This, Danielle at Pep.Culture, Kim at Edith Ann L. Goods, Cindy at keytohappiness.polyclay, and I have to do a big shout out to Cindy for helping me put together this Word document for you guys, and it's so organized and just beautiful. So thank you so much, Cindy, I appreciate you. And then we have Abby at abbyking.handmade, Scotty at Tinsel and Tartans, Nicole at Kip's Collections, Joyce at Vinreh, that's V-I-N-R-E-H, and I'll have all of these down below in the description, and I'll probably pop them up here as well. Carson at Carson Creations, and Christy with Grant Grace Shop. There are a few others that are in the consultant group with me, the creative consultants. They just didn't answer this time around, so they may be answering in future Q&A videos. So I'm going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read off the question that was submitted to me, and then I will go ahead and say who answered it by their first name. So here we go. Number 1. What was the most unnecessary purchase you made in the beginning? Christy says cheap brittle clay. Number 2, best glue for earring backs, and do you sand your earrings before gluing? Scotty said, I do sand the area I'm adhering my earring backs, clip-ons, and tunnels to, and personally love a tiny smear of E6000. I use a toothpick to spread it thinly and evenly to the metal. You don't want it to goop or it won't bond properly. Follow the instructions on the packaging. Abby said, polymer clay and glue are so tricky. For some reason, a glue that works for one person doesn't work for someone else. This is definitely a trial and error process that takes in account multiple factors: glue brand, how much glue, scoring the clay or post before gluing, even temperature of your environment when gluing. This emoji. I've probably tried at least 5 different glues and methods and finally settled on embedding my posts, and I'm still learning different methods. So basically you keep continuing to learn is what I get from that answer. And then Christy said Loctite super glue with UV resin on top. Okay. Number 3, what was the one tool you can't live without? Okay, number 3, what's the one tool you can't live without? Kim says, one of the tools I can't live without has to be the depth guides. In the beginning, I didn't use them and they make earrings look so much more polished and professional. I purchased these on Amazon and used the red ones, which are 2 millimeters thickness, and I'll post the link below. Joyce said, depth guide and roller. Christy said, rotary tool for sanding and drilling holes. Nicole said, I can't live without either a wet towel or Clorox/alcohol wipes. I use a glass surface to roll out my clay, and in between colors, I wipe down my glass tray every time. I also use them to wipe down my rolling pin in between color or when it starts to pick up bits of the clay. Okay, number 4, what's the best thickness for earrings? Christy said, I use one of the last 2 thickness on my pasta machine. Number 5, what are your tips on keeping pieces even in thickness and how do you avoid fingertips? Abby King says, even thickness. You can roll the clay through a pasta machine or use depth guides and an acrylic roller. Don't have depth guides? Use any 2 objects that are the same thickness. Some makers stack playing cards. When I first started, I used popsicle sticks. Avoiding using fingerprints. Fingerprints are hard to avoid. You can wear latex gloves or finger cots when handling clay. Not really environmentally friendly option though. You can use Q-tips and rubbing alcohol to remove fingerprints before baking. Kim says, there are many ways to keep your earrings the same thickness, but I found using silicone depth guides to be the easiest and the best. In the beginning, I tried several other ways, but settled on this option. Keeping the clay clean is one of the hardest things to do, especially in a home with several pets. I keep a bottle of alcohol and Q-tips on my work table and clean as necessary. Also, before baking, I check for any stray dust or fibers and do a final cleanup. Christy says, pasta machine, finger cots, rolling over clay slightly with a roller. And Isabel said, I use a pasta roller to keep the pieces even in thickness, and one way for me to avoid fingerprints is to use different tools to transfer the pieces onto the slab. Number 6, how do you make the cut look clean? Do you put something between the cutter and the clay? Abby said, I have yet to see a technique that makes cuts perfect. If you want edges to be clean, you need to sand your pieces after they have baked. Scotty says, I have found that placing cling wrap / saran wrap over your slab before using your cutters will give you a bit of a cleaner edge pre-baking, but sanding / buffing is still going to give a more finished look. Note, I rarely ever use that trick. Asha says, I have found that putting plastic wrap, but the biodegradable one, not the best for the environment, but it works, over the clay, and then cutting over the plastic wrap curves the edges and creates a soft, clean side that I then fold any excess over to the back, and then after baking, I slightly sand just the back. But I only do this for studs, not for dangles. And Christy says she sands. Number 7, how do you avoid bubbles or remove bubbles? Alyssa says, air bubbles are tricky. I have learned some clay is more prone to air bubbles than others. Sculpey souffle tends to have less as it's less of a tacky clay, but the key is to properly condition your clay. Make sure as you condition your clay, you do so in a manner to avoiding adding more air. If you find bubbles, use a blade to slice open the bubble and smooth out the air. I like using my pasta machine as it helps with decreasing bubbles. Carson said, to avoid bubbles before baking, I run my clay through a pasta machine a bunch of times to the point where I see no bubbles. And this works amazing for the most part, but if I happen to have any pieces that come out of the oven with bubbles, I sand down the surface, then buff it, and they're gone. Christy says, slice the side of the bubble and roll it out. Bake between 2 tiles. Nicole says, after cutting my clay, I let it sit on my tray for an hour or so. I find that letting my clay rest, I have little to no bubbles post-baking. Number 8, what is your key piece of advice for starting a clay jewelry business? Scotty says, just start, in caps. But also, get an idea of how interested your friends / family are. Who is your market? What's your design style? And why do you want to start a business? Consider your current financial means and overhead costs. Clay and cookie cutters are pretty cheap, but costs add up. If you want to start a business, you also have to think like a businesswoman man. Asha says, don't start off making huge slabs and practice making your jewelry and giving it to friends for at least the first month, just to get a good method and find good techniques that suit you. Christy says, don't get discouraged or compare yourself to others. I love that one. Nicole, stay consistent. Post often on social media. Even if it's a cute picture of your dog, post it. It helps keep your name in your followers' heads. They tend to be reminded constantly, or they need to be reminded constantly that you're still active. My favorite tip is every morning, whether it's a release day or not, I post my inspiration and give credit to the original creator. I love sharing who/what inspired me that day and week, and my followers love that little behind the scenes. Number 9, how do you keep your finished jewelry organized? Kim says, one of the best ways I've found to organize clay jewelry findings or pieces in one of these pieces I found on Amazon, but it's always a good idea to check local sale groups. And then I'll put the link below for what she put in there. Carson said, to keep my finished jewelry organized, I put all earrings on earring cards and then neatly stack them in a box that I put to the side for packing days. If I have any pieces that are left over, I store them in a jewelry box and label if they've been sanded and drilled yet or not, and use them for future projects. Okay, number 10, how do you avoid getting the clay dirty? No matter what I do, it still gets dirty. Abby says, start with a clean surface, clean hands, and clean tools. If you still have some lint in your clay before baking, carefully remove it with a Q-tip dipped in rubbing alcohol. Joyce said, make sure everything is clean. Use alcohol and Q-tip or nail polish remover. Don't use white base. Scotty says, unless I'm mixing a color/slab, I clean and wipe my working surface, rolling pin, and wash my hands to avoid pigment transfer. But also, sometimes a little speck of something is unavoidable. Monkey over the eyes is what she put. I have 2 dogs and a cat, and there are days all I do is play whose hair is this. That's gotta be so frustrating. Christy says use a clean tile to work on. Okay, number 11, what is the best sanding method, specific sandpaper or tool? Alyssa says, I bought a rotary tool and used buffing attachments from Amazon to sand down the edges of my pieces, but I also started to use wet sandpaper, 5 different grits, to sand some of my other pieces, especially the back of some of them, as some of my cutters are messier than others. Christy says, use fine sandpaper and a small rotary tool. Number 12. What is the best baking method in your opinion? Glass, cookie sheet, aluminum foil? Isabel says, I bake my pieces on a silicone mat, which is also very sustainable since you won't be wasting baking paper or aluminum foil. Number 13. How do I put holes in already baked clay? Abby says, I use a hand drill, easy to find online for under $10, or a Dremel tool. Hand drills are hard to make mistakes with and leave less of a mess. Dremels are much faster but messier. Alyssa says, I use my rotary tool, but I make sure I make an indentation before I bake to help with the drilling process. Very smart. Asha says, I suggest that you either use a small hand drill like a Dremel or just a small handheld drill, but I use a 1 to 2 centimeter sized drill bit to drill my holes. Also, if you're going to drill holes after you bake, I have found that Sculpey 3 always cracks and chips, but Soufflé and Primo don't chip and crack. Scotty says, I actually just use my Black & Decker power drill with a 5/64 drill bit, but you could also use a 1/16 drill bit and very carefully drill. If you aren't comfortable using a power drill, a hand drill or Dremel are great options as well. And then let's see here, number 14. So we have 14 questions. Number 14, do you plan/draw out your designs and colors, or do you just wing it and create? Joyce says, I find inspirations through artwork like paintings, nature, or color palette. Okay, Alyssa says, I plan out, but I also wing it. I think both are important for my process. Winging it helps me open my mind and just feel what I'm making, kind of like a warm-up, but then I have a vision in my mind of something I want to create. I draw it out, find inspiration for colors using runway fashion, interior design, and artwork. I also like to play with my cutters and move them around and trace them into paper to see how they look together. And Scotty said, I try to have a plan and do 80% of the time. I sketch out my ideas on my iPad, in Procreate, or on a post-it, or in my EC planner when something pretty or fun inspires me. Inspiration-wise, I like to go down the Pinterest rabbit hole of fashion styles that I love. Think modern, vintage, feminine, art deco, geometric, to name a few. Other times, I see a style on TV or on a blogger, etc., and put my own spin on it. So I think those were amazing answers by this group of ladies. I hope that helped you guys out. I know I have so many more questions in my inbox that I need to get to and have this group of makers answer for you guys. So if you have any more questions, you are welcome to leave a comment below, or you can head over to my Instagram at Clay Insights and drop a question there in my inbox as well. Okay, so a couple of things before I go. First of all, I wanted to show you guys one of my new favorite pair of earrings. My friend Casey over at Slow Day Studios made these for me and I absolutely love them. So definitely check out her shop. I'll link her below. Also, I wanted to give a huge shout out to my friend Cheyenne over at Lumen Claiborne. She made these for me and they are so beautiful. They have a texture on them and they are just gorgeous. I absolutely love them. Thank you so much, Cheyenne. Another thing I wanted to tell you guys was about a project I've been working on. I have teamed up with 4 different shop owners to bring you guys a Clay Insights exclusive summer collection. What this will be 5 to 6 different earring designs that will be available to purchase on my website, makerinsights.com. They will begin release in June, and there will be a release every week. So definitely stay tuned for that. I'll give you guys kind of a sneak peek on my Instagram at Clay Insights. If you guys have any questions or comments or any other content you would like to see, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment, email me, or message me on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.